There is something that hurts even more than a breakup. That unexpected silence, the sudden cut-off that leaves you with 1,000 questions and no clear answer. When a man starts ignoring you, whether at the beginning or after you've already grown closer, what you do next can change everything. Not because you can control him, but because you take back control of yourself. Has it ever happened that his messages suddenly stopped coming? He became distant, and you were filled with fear while trying to figure out what you did wrong. It's completely normal to feel confused and vulnerable, but here lies the truth few talk about. The problem isn't that he pulled away. The real mistake lies in how you respond to that distance. Most women act out of pain. They try to fix what they believe is broken. Yet this reaction rarely leads to reconciliation. On the contrary, it's often the reason he withdraws even further. Carl Jung wrote about the dynamics of the unconscious. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to a better understanding of ourselves. And that's exactly the essence of this video. We will use this uncomfortable moment, a man's silence, as a mirror to look inward, not outward. This video isn't about how to manipulate him or make him miss you. It's about avoiding 5 silent but destructive mistakes that many make without realizing it, and learning to reconnect emotionally with yourself, to that place where your inner stability doesn't depend on anyone else. We speak from empathy, emotional truth, and psychological insight. Jung wrote in Man and His Symbols, "As long as you do not make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." What if this silence were actually an opportunity to do just that? And even more, you are not alone. This is also an invitation to connection, to an emotional sisterhood. Because when we understand something within, healing also begins within. And from there, everything changes. So stay until the end. I promise you, every minute will be worth it.
First mistake, superficial coldness.
When a man withdraws or ignores you, you often hear advice like, give him a taste of his own medicine, read his message but don't reply, stop texting him, let him feel what it's like. And while that might sound strong at first, in reality it's quite superficial and risky, because silence can mean many things. Silence born from anger is not the same as silence born from calm. Withdrawal as a strategy is not the same as letting go from inner peace. For men, it's not the message you send that matters, but the emotional energy behind it. When you use the cold shoulder tactic, you usually act from pain, from the desire to provoke a reaction. But to him, that doesn't feel like dignity. It feels like tension. And that tension repels rather than attracts. Carl Jung wrote in Psychological Types, "Unlived emotions never die. They are buried alive and come forth later in uglier ways." That's exactly what happens here. Superficial silence only temporarily covers the unresolved need to be seen and understood. And you don't achieve that through tactics, but through emotional presence. Imagine someone withdrawing for personal reasons, confusion, stress, or fear, and receiving a cold, calculated reaction in return. What might have been only a temporary distance turns into an emotional chasm. He doesn't perceive your behavior as giving him space, but as creating tension. And few men know how to deal with that without creating permanent distance. Many men react differently to emotional coolness. When a woman gives the cold shoulder and there isn't a deep emotional connection, they simply accept it. To them, it means she no longer feels aligned in this relationship. On the contrary, they use this distance to confirm their decision to pull back. Not because they don't like you, but because they interpret your coldness as a sign of emotional incompatibility. Many women misunderstand this. They think they're showing strength, but to him, it feels like indifference or silent drama. He doesn't see that you're suffering on the other side. He only sees a distant attitude that offers no invitation to closeness. The key is understanding. It's not about accepting male silence, but about not reacting from the same emotional place. True strength lies not in holding on, but in focusing. Use silence not as punishment, but as a space for self-care. It's not about disappearing to manipulate him, but about rediscovering yourself. From that moment on, everything changes, because your energy no longer aims to provoke a reaction, but to find your inner center again. From that center, if communication happens at all, the tone changes completely. Calm instead of anxious, mature instead of needy. And that is what emotionally mature men find incredibly attractive. Men don't want to control emotions. To most, they are drawn to women whose world doesn't revolve solely around them. Jung wrote about the ego and the unconscious. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. In this context, it means the need to ignore someone often doesn't come from clarity, but from fear. Fear of not being enough, fear of being abandoned, fear of losing control. When you bring that fear to awareness, you can choose not to act from it anymore. That's why silence should be a conscious choice, not an impulsive reflex, but a deliberate pause, not a loud absence, but a space for healing, not revenge. When you act from this inner peace, it doesn't matter whether he comes back or not. You return to yourself, and that's what truly matters. The first mistake, then, is not silence itself, but silence out of anger, losing yourself while trying to distance from him. It's losing yourself in the process, when your greatest strength lies in walking away with grace, clarity, and quiet dignity. A dignity that doesn't need loud words to be noticed. Second mistake, silence as punishment. There is a big difference between giving space and punishing someone with silence. What often looks like a strategic withdrawal is actually perceived as punishment. Why? Because silence carries emotional weight. When you use it to hurt or provoke, it becomes a power game, not a healthy boundary. The second mistake happens when a woman decides not to speak, not because she needs peace, but because she wants him to feel her absence. That familiar logic. He should only appreciate me once he has lost me. As widespread as this thought is, it rarely works with men. Many interpret silence not as a sign of wanting to reconnect, but as emotional drama or simply as a closed door. Carl Jung wrote in his psychotherapeutic work that where love reigns, there is no place for power. And where power reigns, love disappears. So when silence is used to exercise control, that is exactly what happens. Power is exerted, not connection created. Even if it seems like self-protection at first glance, in truth it creates a tense atmosphere that blocks any possibility of genuine reconciliation. Many men perceive distance very differently than women. While a woman in such moments often feels fear, insecurity, or longing, a man usually sees the same situation as a sign that no expectations are placed on him anymore. Instead of making an effort or reflecting, he withdraws even more. What feels like silent resistance to a woman simply means the end of the conversation to him. He feels no inner urge to clarify or explain anything, but assumes that you are better off without him, and moves on. When silence is used as punishment, it actually reveals a deeper fear of vulnerability. Instead of openly saying, "That hurt me," one chooses to say nothing in order to stay in control. Behind this facade of indifference often lies pain that is suppressed but not healed. Silence becomes a wall that not only keeps the other away, but also imprisons yourself. And the paradox is, this feigned coldness ends up hurting you more than him. An emotionally mature woman does not need punishment. She needs awareness. She asks herself what is happening inside her when he distances himself. What old wounds are being touched? What beliefs about love, loss, or rejection arise? Healing begins right there, in recognizing and understanding your own reaction, not in trying to educate or hurt the other. Jung wrote that the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If one reacts, both are transformed. For this change to be possible, honesty is required, and punishment, even if it appears elegant, is not honesty, but a protective wall. Many people unconsciously repeat what they learned in past relationships or childhood. Silence as a weapon, withdrawal of closeness as punishment. They believe they are protecting themselves, but in truth they are only keeping the pain alive. So if you feel the urge to respond to his silence with coldness, pause and ask yourself whether that comes from your inner wisdom or from your pain. If it is pain, take a deep breath, let go, and return to yourself. Maturity is not shown by how long you remain silent, but by what you do with that silence. Healthy silence heals. It creates space and freedom. It does not manipulate, but gives you the chance to find yourself again. A woman who chooses this conscious silence does not do it to provoke or demonstrate power, but to create peace within herself. The third mistake is provoking jealousy. Many believe that a man will only react when he sees someone else showing interest. The idea is, if he sees me with another, he will realize what he has lost. But this tactic almost always backfires. Jealousy does not create connection. It only awakens wounded pride. A man who returns out of jealousy does not come back because of genuine feelings or a desire for change, but because his ego has been hurt. And thus the cycle of distance, pain, and power games begins again. Without healing, without growth, and without true closeness. Carl Jung wrote in Psychology and Alchemy that the shadow is everything in us that we reject, and that it still shows itself in our behavior. Provoking jealousy is often an expression of that shadow, the unfulfilled need to be seen, validated, and justified. But that need is not met by likes or superficial attention, only by genuine authenticity and conscious presence. Emotionally mature men hardly respond to manipulation. They might notice that you are surrounded by others, but if they sense that you are only trying to make them jealous, they lose interest, not because you don't matter, but because they don't feel chosen. They feel used. For someone who seeks true emotional connection, that is nothing more than disguised rejection. On the other hand, men who get drawn into such games also react from the ego. Their jealousy doesn't stem from love, but from a desire to feel superior. Such dynamics create no stable relationship. They feed insecurity, competition, and fear. This behavior usually has its roots in wounded self-esteem. When we don't feel enough, we seek validation through others' desire to fill the inner void. But such validation is fleeting and fragile. It depends on attention, not true self-love. Trying to make someone jealous often backfires. When a man realizes you've turned the relationship into a game, he withdraws completely. Not because he has no feelings, but because he doesn't want to be part of that dynamic. Jung once wrote that modern man is searching for his soul. If you don't know yourself, you act unconsciously under forces that lead you exactly to what you fear most. And that's exactly what happens when you provoke jealousy out of fear of abandonment. You create what you fear, being abandoned. True strength, then, lies not in showing him that he could lose you, but in not losing yourself. Your worth is not measured by how many men look at you, but by how much peace you carry within. This calm is magnetic. This serenity is attractive. A woman who doesn't compete, manipulate, or need to provoke remains unforgettable. Fourth mistake, emotional honesty with the wrong person. Honesty is crucial in every relationship, but even the most sincere truth can feel like rejection if spoken at the wrong time or in the wrong way. A common mistake many women make when a man withdraws is opening up emotionally at exactly that moment, driven by the desire to clarify the situation or immediately restore connection. This is understandable, yet timing is crucial. There is a difference between speaking from inner calm and speaking from an open wound. When you tell him how you feel, ask for reasons, or confess your fear, you unconsciously expect a reaction that will soothe you. But in such moments, he is often emotionally unable to provide that. What he perceives is not your vulnerability, but emotional weight, something he cannot or does not want to carry. Jung wrote in Man and His Symbols that the encounter with oneself is always first, an encounter with one's own shadow. Opening up while you are still wounded without having understood this shadow can feel overwhelming, not connecting. Emotional honesty should bring clarity, not just relief. If you need to let off steam, do it with yourself, with a friend, or with a therapist. However, if you decide to talk to him, your words should come from a place of inner stability, not from the expectation that he will free you from your pain. Only then can you express yourself without pushing, share without manipulating, and connect without demanding. Many men are not masters of emotional conversations, not because they are cold, but simply because they never learned how. And that is exactly why your emotional self-awareness is the key. It allows you to be honest without losing yourself and to remain open without exposing yourself. When a woman suddenly opens up emotionally and has great expectations, many men feel pressured to fix something they don't really understand. Their natural reaction is often withdrawal or avoidance. That doesn't mean you shouldn't talk, it only means you must learn to recognize the right moment. Sometimes it's better to simply wait, especially when you don't seek comfort but just want to express yourself. When you speak from inner calm, your words don't get lost. They remain in the space without triggering defense. A woman who can maintain her inner balance, not to hide but to grow, develops a kind of magnetic emotional strength. She doesn't need to say everything immediately. She knows when it's time to feel, to reflect, and then to speak. And she knows how to do it. Emotional honesty is not only what you say, but the energy with which you say it. The same sentence can sound like a desperate plea or a calm truth. And that difference is crucial. When you speak from a wound, it may momentarily ease your pain, but can damage the connection. When you speak from awareness, it may hurt at first, but it changes the relationship on a deeper level. So, if you feel the urge to let everything out immediately, pause, take a deep breath, and return to yourself. Your truth does not lose power when you delay it. On the contrary, it grows stronger when it comes from your center, not from your chaos. Fifth mistake, the urge to fix everything. When a man withdraws, many women feel a strong impulse to act immediately, to understand, to save, to solve. His silence feels like a threat, as if something must be done right now before it's too late. Yet this very urge is one of the most common and least understood mistakes. The fear of losing him creates inner panic. If I don't do something now, it's all over.
But often the opposite happens. This urgency looks like desperation. And desperation, no matter how much love it carries, destroys attraction. Jung wrote in Present and Future, "A man needs difficulties, they are necessary for his mental health." That includes phases of uncertainty. Not everything that hurts must be fixed immediately. Sometimes the healthiest thing is to simply endure the space between you, even if it's uncomfortable. because that is exactly where growth can occur.
Many men process emotions differently. Distance doesn't automatically mean disinterest, but often reflection. Yet if during this time you push, demand, or overreact, he won't see it as love, but as pressure. And pressure doesn't bring him closer, it drives him further away. This feeling of urgency also shows that you unconsciously believe something is wrong with you when he distances himself. Then you start to overexert yourself with messages, calls, small attempts to reach him somehow. But true love does not arise from fear, it comes from freedom. A woman who can wait is not passive but wise. She understands that nothing real needs to be forced. If he truly feels, he will return, and if not, she remains whole, because her self-worth does not depend on his reaction. The compulsion to fix everything also prevents you from learning. Instead of asking what is happening within you, you project everything onto him and lose the energy you could invest in your own growth. Forced conversations rarely bring clarity. You often get only superficial answers that solve nothing. So you stay trapped in an emotional cycle where something is always missing. Not just words, but your inner balance. A strong woman is not afraid of uncertainty. She accepts it as part of the process. She knows that letting go of control is not loss, but trust. So when everything in you screams that you must act immediately, pause, breathe, don't act on impulse. Even a pause is an answer, often the most powerful one. Because in that silence you give space not only to him but also to yourself. When a man ignores you, it's less about what he feels and more about what you do with yourself. All the mistakes we've talked about today come from the same pattern: inner separation, the attempt to find outside what is missing inside. The key lies not in reacting, but in becoming aware. Jung wrote in Memories, Dreams, Reflections, "Your vision will become clear only when you look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens." This video is an invitation to do exactly that, to awaken. Do not lose yourself out of fear of losing him. Do not become the anxious version of yourself who begs for attention when someone is unsure if they want to stay. Your calm is more valuable than any reaction. Your clarity is more attractive than any strategy. Returning to yourself does not only mean healing the need, it means becoming magnetic. Because when a woman chooses peace over fear, she becomes unforgettable. Not because of what she does, but because of what she radiates. If this video helped you see things more clearly, then subscribe, leave a like, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Because awakening together, that too is love.